Yo, I literally just made a video on this. Look at this. This is a week ago. This is why I won't be playing Wrath Classic. I feel like I need to apologize. It's like I'm actually reconsidering it now, honestly. And let me tell you why. So there was like two key issues about Classic for me, like not just Wrath or TBC or Vanilla or whatever you want to call it, but like the whole product. And one of them was the fact that this game just seems to be completely unhinged in terms of the way it's played, right? I've been talking to people who are more in the know about this, and their opinions on this are that it's because the community has driven the game's auction or whatever, like the economy, to such an extreme. It doesn't match up with what the game wants. Like, for example, like, if a mount is 1,000 gold but people have 100,000 gold, then it just breaks the game, right? And it starts to make things look really unrecognizable. And I think that was really a big part of it. My other big issue is just the community in general. Like, when I played on actual Classic, there was like people who were like so freaking unaware of what content they were doing. Like, they were like trying to like min-max leveling dungeons and shit, like making comments about me playing a paladin tank in Classic and all this nonsense. And that just really, 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 really turned me off. That was a huge turn off. I already made a video about that and how I put that behind me for Season of Mastery, and I just don't care anymore because I don't want to hang out with these people. I don't really want to spend time with people in the community anymore. So it's like, I just, they're going to still be there and they're still going to be not interesting to play with. But my big, the big turnoff for me that like makes me completely uninterested is just like what the game looks like, right? Well, if it doesn't look like that, then all of a sudden we're now only talking about the content again. Like I said, my thoughts on the Wrath content is everywhere. I hate it. I don't like it at all. I think it's really bad. And I said this to, again, talking about Alex Central in his Discord. Somebody in his Discord said, well, WoW's a social game after all. Like, I've played plenty of expansions where I didn't really like the content, but I like the people. And I was like, yeah, that's a good point. Like, if I don't actually hate the people and the economy problems are solved, well, maybe it's still fun, right? I don't know. So will this solve my problem? Let's talk a little bit about what more specifically about what this problem is. I guess I should just read it really quick, but these are the controversial I assume everybody watching this has already read it, but they've said they're going to do a fresh start. Now, this is a really common kind of like trope almost in the private server scene. I'm going to tell you right now, I am not a fan of the whole fresh thing because I don't want to just stop playing my characters, okay? This is a big problem on private servers, and it was a huge turnoff there, is ultimately why I stopped playing private servers entirely, because these servers just shut down. They're just like, yeah, we're done. You know what I mean? And then people will be like, fresh, hype, fresh. Okay, I don't want to keep re-leveling characters over and over again because like I was like trying to get some connection to the characters. But now I'm like looking at Classic differently. It's actually funny because I feel like anybody who isn't looking at it the way I'm looking at it, man, do I feel bad for them. It was such a thing to like for the guild on Live WoW from Wrath, actual Wrath, to Shadowlands, dude. That was the thing. Like, it was such a big part of my life, man. So could you imagine trying to keep a guild together through all this nonsense? Like, okay, Classic comes out, and then TBC comes out. Well, a bunch of our membership, they'd only really wanted to play with us because they like Classic. They don't really want to play TBC. Now Wrath's coming out. Sweet. But a couple of our players don't really want to play Wrath. And now they're making new realms. And then they did the same thing with Season of Mastery, right? So it's like, I actually feel bad for people who are trying to play the game of TBC or whatever Classic like it's the game from those years ago, because it's just not that game anymore, right? Like it's just not. I said it in the last video, it's unrecognizable from that product. It's completely different, and you basically can't play it that way. Like, I think genuinely it's just better to be like a pug game. Like, just, it's like how I kind of like how I play Shadowlands. Like, just log on and pug, man. Don't even try to make connections because, one day down the road, there's going to be some new twist and turn in this road, and it's gonna fork half the community away again. So like, I don't know. I mean, I actually feel bad for anybody who's like super dedicated to their characters in TBC, and now all of a sudden this fresh start thing. Because on private servers, when they announced a fresh server, there was you weren't playing the old servers anymore, guys. That's just good luck with that. So this is gonna be hotness. Okay, this is my big issue with Classic, is the way people have like hoarded wealth and how they have basically turned this into a economy game. I said this to Size the other day, and I think it's entirely true. This is no longer a progression game. Like, in Live WoW, the way it works is you progress your character over a long period of time. That's the goal of the game. Like, it's the overarching goal, right? You level the character, you gear the character up, You do raids that are hard and you get better at it. You do Mythic Plus and it's hard and you get better at it, or PvP and you climb the ladder. You know, like that is the goal of the game. Okay. That's not the goal of the game. That's like the secondary goal of the game in TBC. In TBC, the goal of the game, like the hardest truth of the progression of the game, like the top layer of the game is get gold. And you can do anything you want with that gold then. And they don't even raid. Like they don't actually raid. They just go into these runs with like people are trying to convince me this is not what's happening, but I'm convinced, even though I have no reason to be convinced, but I am convinced this is what's happening. Very skilled players carrying unskilled players and stealing their money, and not stealing it, but getting their money. I think that's what's going on with this GDKP thing. And because that's what it was when it was in the game in Wrath. I remember this actually being a thing in live WoW Wrath. It was just like a bunch of top raiders on our realm doing it, and then there'd be like 10 people who had never done the raid before, basically. Because somebody needs to buy the gear, right? Like if everybody goes in and nobody wants any of the gear, then there's no reason to do it. I also so will this solve the problem? Let me just say that. I will say that it will, yeah. And I think everybody who's like saying, 90-day fiance Okay. Anyway, everybody keeps saying this 90-day thing, but you know what it says, dude? It says at least. I'm just going to make an amendment to the video because since I recorded this first one, they have now talked a lot more about it. Everybody was making this 90-day thing a big deal, but it never was. They don't put things in blue posts that aren't supposed to be really important words, and it always said at least 90 days. So that was all you ever need to see. But now they've expanded upon that greatly. And this is kind of the crux of the argument right here. Personally, if I was going to play on these realms seriously, I would want there to never be transfers. And it's kind of weird that they would even allow them. So I think this is kind of the perfect summary of what you need to see here. This guy asks, I'd like to see an argument as to how there could ever be a need to allow transfers from old realms to fresh realms. To answer the question of why we'd ever allow transfers from old to fresh, consider that you might have had a friend who didn't roll on fresh, and you might have had a spot open in your roster that she could fill. Obviously, the point is to start on a level playing field, but gold inflates with each expansion, so it's certainly conceivable that the economy on these servers may start to match the others. And if they did, I'm not sure continuing to restrict transfers would be the right call at that point. Actually, really intelligent of them to admit that, because for me, the whole reason that you would even do this in the first place was to try to reset the economy. And if that fails, then yeah, just whatever, just let people transfer. Like, what's the difference at that point? I'm fine with this, man. I really don't have any issues with this. If people want to transfer their old characters over and just play those characters, that's fine. But the big issue is the economy, and it has to be something that's not going to just ruin these servers. But they also bring that up as well. As others have pointed out, there are gold limits on transfers, though it's also true that raw gold isn't the only form of transferable wealth. But I'm going to tell you right now, man, this is exactly what I want to hear from Blizzard. Our intent is to keep the restrictions for as long as they feel like they make sense, and for the time being we're only willing to commit to a 90-day minimum. So basically they're saying like, yo, eventually you'll be able to transfer, because we're not trying to be like hardcore private server fresh where everything has to start over no matter what, and that's never going to change. But they know that there's really no reason for transfers to actually be there. And actually in a post the other day they said that they think a lot of it might have to do with population, and that's the example they give here. Like, if you need people to come to your guild, would you want them to be forced to start at level 1 to be able to replay with you? No, you probably would be fine with them transferring at that point. You know, this could be months down the road. So their original comment, like the prior comment on this was, you know, if the population is high enough that we don't feel like anybody ever would need to transfer onto those realms for it to be active, then we're good. And they're potentially never going to be actual transfers. And so I think that's all just about how they handle realms. Of course, they're going to have to make 6 realms. We were talking about this as well. There's going to be a PvE and a PvP for all 3 time zones. Alex keeps talking about 2 time zones. There's 3 time zones for US players. That includes Australia. Okay, so there's West, East Coast, and then Australia. So there will be 6 servers, and that does dilute the population pretty heavily, but that's just how Blizzard's going to end up doing it. Okay, so back to the original video. I have to apologize, man. I think I'm actually considering it now. Alex Central is going to be, he plans on starting a guild on a PVE version of this Fresh Realm. And you know what I said to him, dude? I'm like, I'll play with him. Man. I'll play there. I'll play on that realm, and I'll at least level. I don't know. This has been a whirlwind, honestly, the last 2 weeks. And so I don't really know what to say about that. But like, yeah, my main concern was that like it's just like no way you can actually. I just don't want to be around it, man. Somebody tried to say like, I don't know why you're so worried about the GDKP runs if you don't even plan on raiding. And it's like, dude, that's so true. But it's like, I just don't want to see it, man. It's just disgusting. Like, I actually am like repulsed by it. So yeah, I'm all of a sudden excited. But I did want to just also bring this into a Shadowlands discussion because I think it's interesting. And we were talking about this before, and I was trying to understand like why the version that we have in TBC is not happening in Shadowlands, okay? And I think it's for two reasons. So the GDKP thing specifically, okay? I think it's happening for two reasons. And those two reasons are the only thing that is keeping it going, okay? Like keeping it from also infesting Shadowlands too. The one that I think is the most important is actually personal loot. Okay, so obviously I've been really outspoken about personal loot. It's a big contributing factor to why I stopped enjoying raiding. Honestly, it might sound selfish and dumb, but handling loot the way we handled it as a guild leader and guild organizer, I felt like it was not optional for a group like ours. Like it really fucked us, like absolutely hammered us when we lost the ability to actually gear out the players that were going to be the most consistent. We constantly watched gear go to people who either did not deserve it or they were just not even, like, you can tell they weren't going to be there consistently, and it just really slowed us down. It really hammered us. So I'm not a fan of personal loot at all in raids. I mean, obviously, it works well in 5-mans and stuff, and everywhere else in the game. But it does seem like it's kind of mandatory because if Master Looter was back in the game, and this is honestly all Ian needs to say, dude, just fucking say this. I can't believe I haven't heard these words out of his mouth now that I've thought about it. Master Loot allows guilds that really want. They really don't want any loot to just give it to somebody who does want it. And where does that happen? Carries, boosts, whatever you want to call them, you know what I mean? It makes that easier by like so much, like way easier, right? Anyway, that's the only way the GDKP thing works, right? But not really, okay? Because, if somebody has the gear already and they don't want it, then they would put it up for the GDKP bid, right? So it can still work with Master Looter gone, but it's really a lot harder. It's a way harder, okay? What's the other reason, and the main reason I think ultimately, is because nobody really plays on one server anymore, and you cannot trade gold across servers. If you wanted to do this concept, every single person in that raid group would have to be on the same realm. Otherwise, you can't exchange the gold with each other. And that's the big thing there. And I actually have to praise Blizzard for that because yeah, I never really understood it. When they started combining realms and stuff and you were able to do everything cross realm, I'm like, dude, why can I not trade certain things across realm? It's so stupid. And they were at the time, they're like, well, there's an economy, bro. Like Fire Tree has to have its economy being only Fire Tree, and then other realms like Dollar Round, they have a bigger economy. So if they trickle in, it's going to corrupt the realm. And I'm like, I just don't care, man. Just let me trade potions to these people. Like, it didn't matter to me at all. But now that I've seen what TBC has had happen with economy, it's like, oh, I see. When you have this many people, like, it's one thing when you only have like a couple thousand people on a realm, right? But when you have this huge spans of people all focused on the economy like this, it gets out of control quick because, Blizzard just didn't really do a good job developing it. Like, honestly, the economy in early expansions is just awful. It's actually really, really, really bad. And the big problem with it is gold infusion, where grays and items in general, or like things that aren't players generating gold themselves, it can really infuse the auction house and it just ruins things. It's inflation, right? And it was really, 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 really bad in Classic. And bringing those characters from Classic to TBC was the biggest mistake they've ever made in this game. And I think if they just did a fresh TBC, we literally wouldn't be talking about this right now. It would have completely dispersed a lot of these issues, and they would have been so slow to grow that by the time TBC would be over, it would actually not. You wouldn't even notice it because there was all these raw gold farms, and that's something they don't really do in Live WoW anymore because of this. You can literally just bot these things, like It's yeah, that's probably what a lot of people are doing, but you can just do them in a way that you basically are just generating gold without actually interacting with the economy. You know what I mean? It's like if you just start printing dollars as the US government, that's the equivalent. And that's what inflation, kind of like the definition of inflation, right? And that's why things get so out of control. So I have to say that, they really messed up Blizzard start to finish. It was a huge turnoff for me, and it still is. But if I have the opportunity, even only for a couple months, to play with people I actually enjoy playing with on a realm that does not have any of this nonsense going on, hopefully, and I can just enjoy the game for a few weeks. And I still I'm not going to actually do content in Wrath. Let's just be serious. I have no interest in the content. Maybe I would do it. At worst, I would do a few dungeons, but I doubt it. I highly doubt I'll actually make it to 80. But anyway, it's back on the table. So if size, if you're watching this, let's have another conversation about this. I did also want to just say, also on top of the whole thing, I also think that the reason that Classic, the whole GDKP thing has happened is because that content is just super easy. I actually predicted this, but I didn't realize I was predicting the raiding content to be this way as well. But people were talking about leveling and like slow and just enjoy and all these words like all magical and shit. And we know it wasn't the case. And that was part of why I hated playing Classic, because everybody was like just freaking speeding through it. They were treating it like a speed run. And I predicted this over a year and a half in advance. I said, dude, people are not, like the logical way you progress in WoW is to get better at it every time you do it, right? So if you've already leveled these characters in Classic, you're not going to be like, oh, let's artificially slow them down to pretend I'm a noob again, because that's what people wanted. Okay, so what I'm saying is Classic content is too easy for people to do multiple times, okay? So including raids. And I didn't realize that I was predicting the raids too, but of course they do speed runs of raids, okay? But you know what else they don't do? They don't pug raid for just gear. Like there's no reason to. It's so easy. You clear it. It's not fun. It's not engaging. People don't want to do that. So they want a reason to do it. And GDKP runs, to their credit, are actually the ultimate incentive to play the content. Like it's up there. You know what I mean? Like imagine if every Shadowlands boss dropped a couple thousand gold. You know what I mean? Like that's basically what's happening here. So it's a good incentive. But it's just not the game. You know what I mean? The raid should be about the progression. And if it's not, then you're playing something. It's kind of sad. For me, it's a huge turnoff. So I think Wrath is way harder. Wrath's content is way harder than Classic and TBC's because they actually have hard modes. And yeah, you know what, dude? Hard mode ICC raids, very challenging at the time. Obviously, looking back, they're not going to be. It's not going to be. I actually had somebody say this the other day. Somebody's like, dude, Muru is the hardest fight in both expansions. Top guilds, they needed 40 pulls to kill it. I was like, what did you just say? 40 pulls. So yeah, it's still gonna be shit like that. But I don't know. Let's end it here. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you guys think about this. We will see you in the next one.